Knight Nation. I'm Trey Strokel. Welcome to this Sons of UCF Extra, a preview of the 2022 Big 12 season. Let's welcome in Adam and Mike. Guys, with UCF moving to the Big 12 in 2023, I know I'm keeping my eye on UCF's future opponents this season.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season because I will definitely be keeping an eye more on the Big 12 than I probably ever would have, right? I'll probably find myself tuning into that high noon, Baylor, Texas Tech game that I probably would have slipped past before just to kind of keep tabs on it. So it'll be fun to kind of keep eyes on both conferences this year. Obviously our focus has to stay on the AAC right now, but it'll definitely be fun to keep an eye and see what's happening in the Big 12.
Big 12 has always been fun to watch. A lot of high-scoring offenses all the time. That championship game last year was a thriller. I enjoyed watching that. And it's going to be cool to have a season where I don't really have a horse in the race. I can just kind of sit back and watch them beat each other up and just enjoy some good football.
Do you think you watch it, though, sizing up what we know about UCF going into the Big 12 against these teams?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, I think you want to see, obviously, how our style of play. And it'll be interesting to see, juxtaposed to how we're playing at that moment in time, how the other teams are playing as well. Obviously, a lot of unknowns for us this year. John Rice Plumlee, the quarterback. No one's really ever seen him play quarterback, so we don't know what we're getting into there. So it'll be interesting to see how the offense is shaping up, how the defense is shaping up, watching the Big 12 in parallel, too. I think probably some freak out moments when we see some teams over there that are playing really well and we eke out a 17-13 East Carolina victory. It'll be interesting to see how fans react to some of that stuff.
Yeah, but the one thing we can all agree on, just beat up on Texas and Oklahoma, right? We're all in on that bandwagon, and just whatever is best for the conference going forward, that's what we're rooting for.
We're already conditioned to horns down. I mean, I think we're already there. I mean, it's just it's a natural integration for us, so we're good there.
That is definitely something we're used to. Let's get to know a little bit more about the Big 12. Let's welcome in Phillip Slavin, host of the Ten12 Podcast, part of the Ten12 Network. Phillip, welcome into the Sons of UCF Extra.
Hey guys, thanks for having me today. I'm coming to you live from my daughter's playroom, which is where I now get to record things, which is great because we've got one of those like couch cushion play things, which works as a great backdrop against the wall. Really absorbs the sound for me, so keep the audio quality great, even though I'm getting old and now my knees hurt every time I have to get up from sitting cross-legged for 30 minutes to record a podcast.
Well, we appreciate you joining us. What do you make of the future Big 12 with the addition of BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, of course, UCF?
I mean, there's the storylines we hear all the time. It's going to be even more competitive because you're not going to have a dominant Oklahoma. It's going to be a lot of excitement. It won't be as good at the top, blah, 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 blah. I mean, to me, you have, look, we can talk about TV viewership and TV numbers, which I know that lots of people in the national media over at The Athletic and everybody else has been just pondering on ad nauseum for the past more than 365 days. But there's no argument that Big 12 fan bases, the 8 that are remaining, are some of the most rabid fan bases possible. And they've become even more online than they ever used to be. There's that Fox College Sports football fan poll going on, and everybody in the final 8 of it's current or future Big 12 teams. And so I look at that and I look at the teams that are coming in, and I almost feel like there's becoming this connective tissue between the 4 teams and the 8 that are remaining before they even arrive. Like there's this relationship building. I mean, we talk about it on the network all the time, and I keep making the joke, but part of the reason we've brought you guys on to the network and brought our Houston show into the network because I'm treating it like we're engaged. We're basically married. We just haven't walked down the aisle yet. We're all family. We're going to the family picnics. We basically moved in together. We just got to seal the deal in front of all our friends and family with season 1 in 2023. But, I do feel like this is a conference that it is, people can say it flipping all they want. It's going to be a ton of fun. It is going to be a very competitive conference. And I don't mean that from the standpoint that I think is often used. It's like, well, they're all really close and it'll be cute, and, but none of them are really going to be challengers for anything. No, I think these are schools and programs who are all very committed to being as successful as possible in all aspects of college athletics, especially in football where you make the most money. Let's just be honest about it. And while, look, no one in here is recruiting at a top 10, top 5, top 15 level, the reason the Big 12 has been so successful is because, look, there's really good coaches in this conference. There are really exceptional college football coaches in this conference. And with what you're going to bring in with Gus Malzahn, with you guys have at UCF, with Fickle at Cincinnati, with Niumatalolo at, that's at BYU. Yeah. Okay. Is that?
He's at Navy.
Sorry.
He's at Navy, yeah.
We're not bringing in Navy.
No, we're not bringing in
No,
Navy.
I don't want Navy. I want nothing to do with Navy.
And we can debate Holgerson at Houston all we want. I I think this is a Big 12 where it is going to be close and it is going to be competitive and it is going to be fun. And not because it's not good enough at the top, but because it really is just going to be a very exciting collection of football teams where, you know what, you may not know who's going to be in the conference championship game every year. And you know, everybody wants some things to change. You're tired of seeing the same 4 teams in the playoff. Well, if you're sick of seeing the same names over and over and over again in conference championship games, then you should be paying attention to the Big 12 because I think you're going to get a lot of variety, and not because teams are going to be volatile, but because it's just going to be that competitive top to bottom.
Let me ask you this also. There's a lot of talk here in Central Florida, followers of UCF, that whether UCF is the right cultural fit for the Big 12. What does that mean? What is the culture of the Big 12?
I think because you're talking about a lot of universities where you guys are in Orlando. UCF is in a major metropolitan area. Oklahoma State is in Stillwater. It is a 40-minute drive from Oklahoma City, or it's a 45-minute drive from Tulsa. There is not a straight thoroughfare, straight interstate to Stillwater. You have to get off of either interstate and get there, right? It's kind of in the middle of nowhere. You can't just land a plane straight. Though there's an airport, you can get there straight from Dallas on an American Airlines flight. If you got a lot of money, which I started doing for some of the rich alums in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, you look at Kansas State and Manhattan. It's not a thriving metropolis. You look at Lawrence, Kansas. It's a great college town. It's not a thriving metropolis. Ames, Iowa. Yes, TCU is in Fort Worth. Lubbock is a good sized city, but it's so far out in West Texas. I don't think people even realize how big it actually is. Waco, just kind of a growing small college town. So I think the biggest difference to me when we talk about UCF, Cincinnati, who's joining, Houston, who's joining, you're talking about universities who, I mean, their names, they are in large metropolitan areas, and you're joining a conference where you get a lot of schools that are in true college towns. Like Austin is not a college town. Don't come to me like the best college towns. If you put Austin in your top 10, and I love Austin, it's a great fun place to go and hang out. It's a great fun place to be. It's a great fun place to be whether you're going there for UT a game or if you're just going to Austin. What defines a great college town is you're going there because it's a fun place to go for college athletics or things related to that university. I live in a tiny town in the middle of Arkansas. There's a small D3 university here. It's not really a college town, but it's basically a college town. Like a college town to me is there's not 1,000 other things to do where you're located. You're there because you're going for the school. And so if you want to talk about that kind of a difference, sure. But I think the more I paid attention to UCF and the more I paid attention to UCF fans, and I've been trying to do that as much as I can, I think there are a lot more similarities between UCF and Cincinnati and Houston and BYU and the 8 Big 12 schools who will be here after Oklahoma and Texas leave than I think most fan bases realize. And I think the more time that we spend together and tailgate together and visit each other for football and softball and basketball and all the other sports, I think we're going to find that out, because the more I paid attention on at least social media from this point is I think these are just rabid fan bases that love their school and are passionate about it. I think there are more similarities than differences.
Yeah, Phil, what's the perception of UCF for the schools that are in the Big 12, UCF coming in? What's the perception of UCF? What's your perception of UCF as you've kind of watched them afar, but now getting a little closer as we, make our entrance in 2023?
I mean, I think most people's perception of UCF is based off of the national championship year. I'm sorry, I have to use air quotes.
Whoa, hey now. Hey.
I'm sorry, but like
easy.
But understand, that's the outsider perspective of UCF. I think that's most people's perspective of UCF. Fair or otherwise, those who aren't connected to UCF or don't see or on a regular basis aren't playing UCF year in and year out. Their only perception is that one big season and how the fans have reacted to it and afterwards. Like I said, fair or otherwise, but the more I've gotten to know UCF and having talked to you guys in large part, to be perfectly honest, I mean, we had Adam and Mike on the show to introduce you guys when you guys joined the network. And you answered a lot of questions that really did make me feel like one of the reasons I think UCF is such a great fit is I do think you are. I think you're just really, really passionate. And when only time you ever noticed somebody is when their fans are on social at their most online and most annoying, that is going to sway your opinion and your viewpoint of them. But the more time you spend with anybody, like we talked about, this is like a Hallmark movie. You guys are just the obnoxious guy that we would never end up with, but we're gonna by the end of the movie because it turns out you actually have a very soft.
Mike loves those movies.
So, like, I mean it as a joke, but also like I think that's the reality. Because again, I do think the more I've gotten to know Houston fans and UCF fans. And maybe it's just because of the ones that I have been limited to since I've really been paying attention to. Maybe it's just the good ones all come and focus and talk to us on the 1012 network and the 1012 podcast. And you've given me this great new perspective on these fan bases. But it's like I said, I think my perception has changed drastically because I've actually taken the time to try and get to know the fans of UCF as best as I can. And so far, I've liked what I've seen.
I think it's obvious that most hated schools right now in the Big 12 are Texas and Oklahoma. But with those two leaving, who now takes over that reign as the most hated school in the conference? And how long will it take for UCF to become that most hated school?
I mean, I was afraid you guys might be until I got to know you a little bit better, and that opportunity is still there.
We're not representative of the entire Twitter mafia. Okay. Mike a little bit more so than Adam and I.
Hey, I keep making the joke. The Big 12 is the most online conference fan base possible. You guys are going to fit right in. I'm not sure who that's going to be yet. And OU and Texas have been easy targets because OU has had a lot of success and Texas has a lot of money, right? So it's two fan bases that are easy to point out and say, those are the enemy because we all want to beat them. I think if you ask different fan bases, they're going to give you different answers. Kansas State and Iowa State fans can't stand each other. The Farmageddon is a real rivalry. It may not be as big of a rivalry on the actual football field nationally, but it's going to be the best rivalry in the Big 12 once Oklahoma and Texas lead the conference. I think they don't like each other. There's a lot of fans who would tell you that it's Baylor for reasons off of the football field that we don't have to talk about because everyone knows what happened at the University of Baylor some years ago. I think UCF has an opportunity because of the perception of UCF fans based off of the national championship year. So I don't know that there is going to be one fan base that everybody just hates, because unless somebody rises to the top and becomes Oklahoma and wins the conference on a regular basis, unless their fan base becomes ridiculously obnoxious because of it and full of Twitter trolls, I don't know that there's going to be one, you're the ultimate hated enemy, unless someone does something awful or that makes the conference look bad, or there is a fan base that just becomes so obnoxious and untethered from reality that we're all like, I mean, everyone needs that crazy uncle in the conference. We're just not sure who's going to step up and take that role.
You're doing a great job weaving this family analogy.
Thank you.
All of your answers. By the way, is Texas and Oklahoma the exes or the estranged spouses that are still hanging out at the party? What are they? Exactly?
Are they at the barbecue, the picnic?
No, they're gone. Their invites have been rescinded. We're still going through divorce court right now, but once we're done, we will be ceasing all ties of communication between them and us.
On a recent Sons episode, we welcome in a guest representing TCU, and the cautionary tale there was the move that UCF is going to make from the American to the Big 12 may be a little tougher than a lot of fans in Night Nation expect. What would you say to that?
I'm really curious about that. And that's been one of my biggest questions about the four schools incoming, because you think about the success that TCU had before they joined the Big 12. But when they got to the Big 12, year 1, 7-6, year 2, 4-8. And then they had 2 really good years of 12-1 and 11-2. But it took till year 3 for them to really get things rolling when they arrived. West Virginia, 7-6, 4-8, 7-6, 8-5, 10-3. It took them a little bit longer once they got to the Big 12. And I think that's more to do with geography, with issues with West Virginia. They've always been a bit of an odd fit. We love them very much. At least I do. I think their fan base is great. But there's no arguing that they have for a long time pined for their ex-girlfriend, which is the ACC and the teams there that they used to play, far more than they have really focused on their current relationship with the Big 12. Yeah, I can keep making this joke all night. I'll see how long I can keep it going. And so I really am curious of the four schools coming in. TCU and West Virginia, they're going to be here next year, and then they were there, and it took them a few years. With UCF, Houston, Cincinnati, and BYU all having a year basically of preparation. Everybody found out they were joining back in 2021. Now, so you had the 2021 season, you have the 2022 season, and then everyone's joining in 2023. Does that time before they get to the Big 12 help them better be set up to be acclimated to it when they arrive? You would expect that they have been able to use that as a recruiting tool for the 2022 class and potentially the 2023. So maybe you've had 2 classes that will be joining each of those schools who are better suited to serve in the Big 12. Also, you have the transfer portal, and you didn't have the transfer portal back then. The transfer portal is the way to try and boost your roster in a specific year to try and improve the talent level and be more competitive in the Big 12. I think the 4 teams joining are better suited to have immediate success now than TCU and West Virginia were then. And it's not necessarily because of the 4 teams and who they are, so much as the timing of them joining and having the 2 years of preparation, both to just from a roster standpoint and a everything else to get ready, not to mention just the state of college football now and having the transfer portal and the ability to immediately improve or drastically change your roster to be more prepared for a move to a Power 5 conference.
Let's talk about basketball for a second. Is there any chance you think we can get all the schools in the Big 12 to spot us 20 points a game to start? Because if not, we're going to be in trouble for a couple of years here in the Big 12.
Is 20 going to be enough?
I mean, I was just trying to be nice. I figured it's a nice round number. I don't know.
I'm sorry. You guys had a nice game against Duke a couple of years ago.
We had a nice game a couple of years ago.
2018, that's fine. Yeah.
I mean, look, can I just be honest, as a fan of a Big 12 school in Oklahoma State as a conference, we used to have TCU to pick on, and when they were here, we had A&M to pick on for a while. It'd be nice to have a school where you one game off, you have Kansas
nice to meet
football.
You. We're here. Nice to meet you.
Yeah. I wouldn't hate the opportunity to play UCF twice a year, home and away, just to feel like you've got a couple of easier games. And I know that's a low-hanging fruit joke here, but look, the Big 12 schools are all committed to basketball, and TCU wasn't for a while, and now they are, and you've seen the success they're able to have. I think if you are a program that becomes committed to men's basketball, and women's basketball for that matter, because the Big 12 and women's basketball is vastly underrated and very good. I think once the university decides to invest in it, the Big 12's reputation very much is a tide that lifts all ships. It's hard. It is a gauntlet every single year. And it'll be tough for a few years for UCF unless you just are able to bring in some rosters with talent. But I do think the Big 12, look, Iowa State went winless 2 years ago, and then they got to the Sweet 16 last year. The Big 12's reputation is something I think will help UCF a lot in recruiting, in fundraising, because the Big 12 is such a rabid basketball fan base and basketball conference that it's going to start to bleed into UCF, whether you guys and the fan base and the university feel that way right now or not. It's going to get there. So even if you're bad now, again, TCU was bad for a long time until they finally said, "No, we're done with this. We're going to invest and we're going to be good at men's basketball as well because it's important in the Big 12 to be that way." I think UCF will get there. It could take a couple of years. It could take a little while. But I do think once you get the hire right, and I forget who the head coach at the men's basketball team. We just talked about the women's coach.
Johnny Dawkins.
Thank you. I know we just hired the Baylor, I guess LSU/Baylor assistant from Kim Mulkey to be the women's basketball coach.
City of
Jamie is very excited about that. Jamie Steyer, who's one of my Ten12 Podcast co-hosts and does color commentary for the Iowa State women's basketball team on the radio. She's very excited about that hire. So you guys should feel good because she knows what she's talking about. I just think how
does she feel about Johnny Dawkins?
Ask her about women's. No, I'm just kidding.
By the way, we said we're the future of college football. We never said anything about the future of college basketball. Just
if you're joining the Big 12, I'm sure I can't imagine they sat in that meeting and the Big 12 board president's like, "So how do you feel about basketball?" And UCF went, "We don't care." Try again. Because FedEx would love for us to bring Memphis in instead. So.
How are you in cheerleading? Because we're really good at cheerleading. And they're at basketball games. So
that's good.
There's that. The banners
you guys are really good
at
softball. And I am, as a Oklahoma State fan and an avid softball fan and a father of 3 daughters who I would love to see play softball, I'm psyched with us losing Oklahoma and Texas. And no, this is not a shot at UCF in any way, shape, or form. You're not replacing Oklahoma or Texas in what they are. But I'm psyched for your softball showing with the Big 12 because I feel like UCF OSU series can get fun, and we need somebody else who can be a top-notch host on a regular basis. I know last year was the first year, but I'm very excited with what you guys have building there at UCF and softball.
All right, we've spoken to somebody from each school so far, and we try to get them to all sell us on taking a trip there. Give me your ranking, the best road trip possible in the Big 12. And give me the worst one, too. What is the place you never want to go to again?
All right. Now I have to be fair because I haven't been to all the schools. And while it is on my bucket list to do so, like I said, I've got 3 kids that are 3 and under. So that list is on pause collecting dust at the moment because it's
not a lot of trips to Lubbock. Is that what you're saying?
I was actually supposed to go to Lubbock for an Oklahoma State Texas Tech game.
A lot of people say that they were supposed to go to Lubbock.
Then my wife's high school reunion decided to be on the exact same day as that game. So as a smart man, I chose the high school reunion over the football game. I have heard great things about Lubbock from those who have gone there. At least Texas Tech fans love it. I've been in Norman. They continue to make tailgating worse than when I went there. There's not better tailgating than Stillwater. And if you can go for homecoming, it's the best homecoming in the country. It's a ton of fun. I've been to Lawrence, Kansas. Lawrence is a great college town. Like, we can make jokes about Kansas football and take Kansas football and set it aside. Lawrence is a fun college town. The last time I was there, and that's been a little while, they had done quite a bit around their downtown area. I can only imagine it's even better now. I would love to get to Manhattan. I have been to Austin, like I said, fun city. I would love to get to Morgantown. My fear is that if I go to Morgantown, I might lose a couple of days as I try and drink with them. My liver's not quite what it used to be, nor my drinking constitution. I'm no longer in college.
What's your position on couch burning? Because that seems popular.
As long as I'm not sleeping on it, cool. I think everyone's different and everyone's fun in different ways. Like I said, I need to get to everybody at some point. I really do want to get to Ames because there are some good people and there is some great tailgating in Ames. And from everybody I've heard who's gone up there, they've had a great time. It's a very welcoming fan base. And I think that's the biggest thing is you're going to find there's a lot of welcoming fan bases. I did go to TCU. It was a good trip. I've never been to an away game that my Cowboys lost at. So it's always been a good trip for me every time I seem to have gone on the road because my team always wins. So there's that.
Well, we don't need you to come to Orlando. Cross that off.
UCF next year. Got it. All right. Orlando.
Well, let's talk about that in the schedule right now. 2023 going to have Oklahoma and Texas in there. Looking at a 4-5 split. The UCF is thinking 4 home games, 5 away games. What do you make of conference scheduling with Texas and Oklahoma, and then without them?
Do you want me to be petty or realistic? Because petty me is make them.
We love petty.
Make them go on the road to all 4 newcomers every year until they leave. Make it so that they can't both be in the conference championship game. Whatever you got to do to make them hate their very existence until they're. I'm kidding, kind of. We have a very simple, tried and true message of the 1012 podcast and the 1012 network since I run it. No divisions. Dag nabbit, gosh darn it. Bleepity bleep bleep. No stinking divisions. Nobody wants.
You don't want legends?
I need legends, neither legends nor leaders, nor husbands, nor wives, nor whatever you want to call it.
What about a coastal?
I mean, West Virginia's near a coast, I think. So it's a 2-team division followed by. I want protected rivalries. I want, whether it's 2 or 3, I want the luxury of being able to adjust who you play on a regular basis. I want everyone to play everybody as often as you can. When it's at 14, when it's at 12, I do not want divisions. I think there's still some internal fighting amongst the ADs as to what the plan is going to be, which is why there still has not been a plan announced or a hint at what the plan is going to be. I think hopefully Brett Yormark can unite everybody and get some things decided as opposed to everybody kind of working on what's best for themselves, which I get as an athletic director. Your job is to do what's the best thing for your school. I'm not going to fault you for that, but there does come a point where, again, rising tides lift all boats. Let's do what's best for the conference. And in my opinion, that is making sure the 2 best teams get to the conference championship game every year. We don't need a division like we used to, where you had one division that is dominant and another division that is not. I think you need the 2 best teams in the conference championship game. And I like the idea of 2 or 3 teams that you play annually. We've got a situation in the Big 12 where Bedlam is going to be gone. Red River is going to be gone. There are rivalry games, but none of them live up to those 2, in my opinion. Farmageddon is awesome. It's going to be super fun. The rivalry.
It's got a great name.
And they need a trophy. Gosh darn it. The rivalry is a ton of fun. My pitch has always been a tractor like transformer, but it's very large, like man size, very obnoxious and made out of actual like tractor parts or just beer cans, which would be fitting. The rivalry is a ton of fun. I think you're going to get TCU and BYU, who used to play each other in the Mountain West. There's some heat there. West Virginia and Cincinnati used to play in the Big East. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I want to, you can't force a rivalry, and I understand that entirely. I get it. But I want annual opponents that you face every year and then rotate through everybody else as quickly and as fast and as often as you can, because I think that's going to help build the relationship between everybody even more. And it's going to lead to new rivalries that we couldn't even picture. Like, UCF BYU wanting to play every single year. I kid.
Phillip, if I made you Brett Yormark today and you had the opportunity to do whatever you want with the Big 12 expansion plans, you can go after any school you want, you can go after any strategy you want. Where do you want to see the Big 12 go in terms of whatever is going to happen as dominoes continue to fall with expansion?
Well, if you're sitting with where you are, expansion is weird and tricky because in theory, here's the problem, and I think the biggest reason why you've had the hardest time locking down any teams from the Pac-10. And we had Matt Brown of Extra Points on the show to kind of talk about all the other things besides football, TV money, right? And one of the biggest issues for the schools in the Pac-10 bringing them over is their alumni bases, a lot of them are in California. And if your alumni base is in California, you want to be playing teams in the state of California on a pretty regular basis. The problem for the Big 12 is, do you want a conference that stretches all the way from Orlando, Florida to San Diego, California?
Hell yeah.
Unless you're going to get Big Ten money to help be able to cover the cost of trying to do that, that's going to put you in a tough spot for those teams that are on the far outreaches of the conference, in my opinion. I don't think that sets you up for the most success. It may sound really cool. It may look really cool. It may be funny having to watch San Diego State and UCF go visit each other every couple of years. But I'm not sure that's the best thing for your customer. Because unless adding those teams is going to guarantee you a significant increase in funds from TV revenue, as fun as it is to add the Corner Four, and I would love to get the Arizona schools, trust me. But if your issue is always going to be schools in the state of California, this isn't a shot at UCF, but you kind of shut the door on that when you added UCF. Because I don't think that's a good thing for UCF to have teams that far apart from each other. Like, we're talking about how ridiculous it is that USC and UCLA are going to have the closest school to them is Nebraska. How ridiculous is it that you're going to have teams from literally the two coasts in the same conference? And I think that's going to be your issue until the Pac-10 just completely falls apart because Oregon ends up somewhere else or Washington ends up somewhere else. And so you can snag those Corner Four of Utah, Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, or however many want to come over to the Big 12. They make the most sense. I like Memphis selfishly because I live 2 hours from Memphis, so I'd love to be able to travel 2 hours to a Big 12 school and go to games there. Memphis itself as a city is kind of fun. Bill Street is neat, and they're really good at basketball, typically, usually.
There's that basketball rub again.
Yeah.
Get set in again.
Selfishly, I would love Memphis, but I also understand why we're not going to add Memphis. Like, I get it. I'm not, from a business standpoint. So if I was Brett Yormark, realignment will be whatever gives everybody the most money, not the conference. Each team individually gets us the most money because it is an arms race, and you're never going to keep up with the Big Ten and the SEC at this point. It's just not possible. What's most important is what strategy do I put together to make us the third most important or the third biggest or the third most recognizable brand as a conference. And that is the most important thing. The ADs are going to worry about what's best for each of their schools individually. I don't care. What I have to care about is what lifts the conference as a whole. It is all about brand now. The Big Ten is a brand. We can talk about the schools in the Big Ten and the importance of Ohio State and whatnot. The Big Ten is a brand. The SEC is a brand. If you go ask randos on the street and show them and ask them about, can you name any college conferences? You think they're going to name the Big 12? If they're not an avid fan of a school in the ACC, Pac-12, or Big 12, which ones do you think they're going to be able to name first? Big Ten and the SEC. It is about brand building as a conference. So my job as Brett Yormark or as conference commissioner is not what's best for UCF, what's best for Cincinnati, what's best for Oakland. What's best is to get all of you the most money you can and hope that you do the best job you can with that money by building this brand. I've ever made fun of the hipper, younger, cooler remark, but he's not wrong. Like the idea behind it, the reality of what he's saying is we have to do the things that get the fans who are younger and that attract those younger fans who are going to grow up caring about the Big 12, that get the players who are younger to care about and want to come and play for the Big 12 as a brand. Because a lot of these kids, yeah, they're picking their school, be it Alabama or Georgia or Florida or Auburn, but they want to go play in the SEC, right? That's the comments you hear from people who cover recruiting. They want to go play in the SEC. And from there, they'll figure out which school it's going to be in. That's the mindset you have to have about the Big 12 if you want to be number 3. We can talk about expansion. We could talk about what teams to add. Until players want to go and play in the Big 12, your focus has to be purely on the conference, and that's his job.
I think a lot of us are excited at the chance of maybe playing Texas or Oklahoma next year, especially Oklahoma with Dylan Gabriel over there and that whole tie. But what's your confidence level that those two schools are actually still going to be around by the time we enter the conference? I know everybody's saying the right things right now, and they're going to be there. Do you feel confident that those schools will be around?
Let me put it this way. I don't think either of them want to pay the money that's required to get out, no matter how much money Texas has early. So unless they come up with some deal, or ESPN comes in with some deal, or there's some incentive to get Brett Yormark to want to allow them to leave early at some reduced cost or something, they're here. I don't know how many more people have to talk about these grant of rights and basically say, like, you're not breaking a grant of rights without basically giving up an insane amount of money. That's why no one's leaving the ACC early. Like, that's why Oklahoma and Texas aren't already gone. Like, everyone has to say that legally, that they're committed. And if you ask me to put money down on it, do I think that they might leave by 24? Sure. But I think they're here next year. You're going to get a year of Oklahoma and Texas in a 14-team Big 12. Like, it's going to happen. And I know we all thought last year they'd be gone early. No problem. I mean, we treated last fall like this might be the last season. I went to Bedlam. I don't like going to Bedlam as an Oklahoma State fan. We lose all the time. It's not always fun. I went to Bedlam because I was like, this could be the last Bedlam in Stillwater. By golly, we won. Merry Christmas to me. Great Christmas present. But just like to remind everybody that my pregnant wife was freaking awesome, because we got down on the field together, and that is not the easiest drop for a pregnant woman to make. And props to her and all.
How much of a drop is that?
Tall. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't bring a yardstick. But I lost my train of thought on that one.
As long as you didn't push her down.
Hey, she got on her own. Just props to her. I don't think they're leaving early. Like, the further we get into this, like, maybe they do, but they're going to have to negotiate some deal that makes a lot of sense. And I almost think they're going to have to get help. And I don't know what ESPN's incentive is to get them out to the SEC early. Like, they don't care. Like, unless they just have to have them in 2024 when the new SEC deal kicks in. Maybe they get out then. But they're here next year. And at this point, I would be more shocked if they left early than I would if they stayed all the way until summer of 2025.
Let's talk about this upcoming season. Preseason predictions have Baylor number 1. Is that how you see it?
I have Oklahoma number 1. And the longer I've done this, the more I hate rankings. I hate 1 through 10.
Oh, you and Mike, like this, fast friends.
Because in reality, things work more in tiers than they do. I mean, the problem with like 1 through 10 is everyone's like, why would you put us fourth? Like, fourth, 1 to 4 is like some drastic drop off. Like 1 through 4 could be like a minuscule difference. It could be the same distance 1 to 4 as it is 4 to 35 or 10 in this case. I like tiers. I think OU is in a top tier. And maybe it's just that they've done it for so long. And yes, I know they missed the Big 12 title game last year, but it's because they lost the 2 teams that were in there. It was a down year for Oklahoma, and they still went 10-2 and won their bowl game. Like, we all love that. I have OU in the top tier. I have Baylor in that tier with them as well. And then I've got a big old grouping of OSU, Kansas State, and Texas kind of together. And I keep debating if someone else should be in that tier with them. Maybe not. I think OU will probably get it done. My biggest question for OU this year, Brent Venables is going to bring in a new culture. And I say new, it's the culture that was there under Bob Stoops, which is a far more aggressive, hard-nosed, disciplined program than I think Lincoln Riley ran. And culture takes time. And playing that style when you have a roster who's not used to playing that style because it hasn't been that way for 4 years, and you don't have a roster of players who remember what it was like when Bob Stoops was still the head coach. It takes time to integrate. So if there is a down year for Oklahoma, I still don't see him winning fewer than 9 games. Like, don't get me wrong, OU losing to Nebraska so they have to give Scott Frost an extension when they don't want to is the funniest thing that could possibly happen this college football season outside of A&M losing to a random team. But like, that is the most wouldn't it be funny possible. But I still feel like Oklahoma still has too much talent. And it's not like I get it. It's a whole new coaching staff. I mean, there's a few holdovers. And we don't know what Brent Venables is going to be like as a head coach. But we know he's a dang good defensive coordinator. And if you think Ted Roof is actually going to be the one calling the defense and not just doing the prep during the week so that Venables can call the defense during games, you're crazy. And Levy's offense is perfect for college. It's not perfect for pro. And if you want to go pro, like, your good stats are going to look good, but I don't know how good you're going to be as a pro running that system, but it's going to win you a lot of games and get you a lot of stats in college. And he's got a quarterback who knows it. So like, there's plenty of reasons to be worried about Oklahoma, but there's plenty of reasons to be worried about every team in the Big 12 this year. And so I'm going to lean on the team that's got the most talent and has proven enough times that they can use that talent in close game situations to beat teams who are inferior from a roster standpoint than they are. So I'll give Oklahoma the edge at number 1. I think Baylor's at number 2. That defensive line is scary. Defensive lines in the Big 12 this year are going to be a ton of fun to watch. I would hate to be an offensive lineman in the Big 12 this year. They're already not great. They're good. There's good offensive lines, but compared to the defensive ends and the pass rushes you're going to face, whoo, good luck. Have fun. I hope you can survive the whole season with a healthy offensive line. I put Baylor at 2, and then it's just, I mean, who knows with Iowa State? They're a wild card, but they seem to have a winning Big 12 record every year, even though they can't beat Iowa. Kansas State's roster looks really good, and Deuce Vaughn is going to be a ton of fun. Texas has a ton of weapons on offense, but I've got major questions on offensive and defensive line, and we've got to see if that defense can take a massive step forward. And oh, by the way, Quinn Ewers hasn't played actual college football period or football in a few years. He's technically would be a true freshman had he played his senior year in Texas in high school, but didn't because Texas decided that high school, they wouldn't do NIL for high school students. That's why I went to Ohio State, make a bunch of money. Oklahoma State, you lost a lot off that defense. Like, they shouldn't be bad. You brought in Derek Mason, who's a good defensive coordinator, but Spencer Sanders is Spencer Sanders. Is he going to take the big leap this year? I don't know. I mean, every team has questions. The ones that I feel like I have the fewest about are Oklahoma, Baylor, and Kansas State, which is why I kind of think Kansas State might get to the Big 12 title game, because ever since the Big 12 title game came back, somebody new has been in it every year. Oklahoma got there every year until last year, but it was TCU, and then it was Texas, and then it was Baylor, and then it was Iowa State, and then it was Oklahoma State last year. And so if that trend continues, somebody new's got to get in there. Well, that leaves Kansas, West Virginia, Kansas State, and Texas Tech. Of those 4, if I'm going to keep this trend going, I feel most confident in Kansas State, and it probably will finally end this year, but I thought for sure it was going to end last year, and it didn't.
All right. If you follow the Sons of UCF at all, Phillip, one of the things we do is we put coaches on hot seats, probably prematurely at times, but we like to put a good coach on a hot seat. So in the football specific realm, which Big 12 coach is on the hot seat for you this year?
There's not one. That's a terrible answer.
It's got to be somebody.
Well, here's the problem. From performance standpoint, you would say it's Neil Brown. But if they try and fire him this year, they'll own like $20 million. And so Neil Brown is safe. Like, the hottest seat is the guy who they just can't afford to fire after this year, even if they have a bad season. Like, you can't. It's too much money for West Virginia to fork over to fire a football coach and hire a new one. Outside of that, I mean, you're not going to fire Venables after 1 year unless they win one game. Are they going to fire Sark? I mean, you just got Arch Manning. Even if they go 5-7 again, as long as Arch Manning stays committed, Sark's not going anywhere. At least not right now, not with Quinn Ewers there and Arch coming in. Texas Tech's got a new head coach. TCU's got a new head coach. Dave Aranda just won the Big 12 last year. He's not going anywhere. Kansas isn't going to fire Leipold. Let's see. Matt Campbell, I'm surprised they don't have a statue of him already. That leaves Kansas State. So, okay, let's play this game. The only coach I could reasonably see maybe be in the hot seat at the end of the year if they have just a terrible season, especially when you have the most players on the preseason team, you have Deuce Vaughn back, and there are some expectations for you this year. Maybe Kansas State just bottoms out and has a bunch of injuries and goes 3-9, and Coach Kleiman's on the hot seat. But even then, he'd be on the hot seat entering next season. I don't see a coach being fired this offseason for on-field performance issues. If anyone's fired, it's for off-field stuff, or someone just leaves for another job, and so they have to hire somebody new. But I honestly think, unless Kleiman just bottoms out at Kansas State and they win like 2 or 3 games, I think everyone's safe this year.
All right. Well, give Mike some time. He'll work on that. He'll get back to you and who's on the hot seat. He's good at this. It's a science that he's got.
Yeah, if you're gonna win 2 games, you're on the hot seat automatically.
There you go.
But again, that's hot seat entering 23. Not like I don't see anybody whose seat is hot enough right now that if they have a bad season, they're getting fired. Again, it would have been Neil Brown. If Neil Brown wins 4 games or 5 games, like his seat is hot. They owe him $20 million. They're not going to pay that to get rid of him.
All right, of the 4 teams joining the conference, who do you think is the best overall fit to go along with what you guys have now?
Well, it's not.
This
BYU.
is a UCF-based show, if that'll help.
It's not BYU. Here, I'm going to take pot shots at all 4, so it's fair. It's not BYU. I don't like Dr. Pepper. It's not Houston because I'm not sure how much they actually care. It's not Cincinnati because they put. I don't know what Skyline chili is still. I think it's chili on spaghetti, which is like I've seen it, but I don't want it.
That's fair.
It could be UCF, but you guys aren't any good at basketball, so I don't know how you're going to fit in here. I'm kidding. That was fun. I'm trying to be more positive and optimistic on my show, and so it's fun to go elsewhere and not be. I think UCF might actually be the answer. Houston makes the most sense because they're in Texas and closest in proximity, right? But I think there are avid Houston fans. Like, I think Houston cares more about men's basketball than they do football, which makes sense in the Big 12.
Yeah.
Cincinnati, I'm still getting to know them. BYU, they're coming. UCF's got a shot there. I mean, honestly, I know I'm on a UCF show. I'm supposed to be pro UCF so that everyone will like me and follow us on Twitter and listen to my show. I think UCF has a real shot here. And I think the reason people wouldn't pick UCF is, again, geography, them being so far away. I just don't think everyone's as familiar with them. And maybe it'll be Cincinnati when I get to know their fan bases more, but I've got to add a Cincinnati show to the network, and we just haven't done so yet.
Let's wrap up here. Tell us more about your show and the 1012 Network.
My show is the 1012 Podcast. We are the flagship show of the 1012 Network. As I said, the 1012 Podcast, the podcast that covers all 10 teams in the Big 12 Conference, plus BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. As a network, we started this in 2021. The goal was to create a podcast network that focused on the Big 12 Conference. We announced it. We planned it for months, and we announced it like 2 weeks after it was. We found out OU and Texas were leaving. Yes, we got a lot of questions of, are you still going to have a podcast network built around a conference that may not exist? Luckily, it still does. My goal is to add a show for every school. One show for each school. Find the best shows and the best podcasters and the best people I think fit our network, and create a broad variety of individuals who are passionate about their school and are passionate about being in the Big 12. To just create a sense of, I hate using the word community because it's like a marketing buzzword that gets thrown around a little bit too much, but I can't think of a better one off the top of my head that doesn't sound more synergy-like. So we'll go with community, but a community of podcasters who love their school and love talking about it and love the Big 12. It's why I love having you guys. I think you guys are fantastic. I think you're the best UCF podcast there is. There are other good UCF shows. I know of one. I'm sure there's more. I said you guys are the best. Like, it's okay to be like, there are also people who do this well. And so, look, I love our network. We're 11 shows strong. You can find every show at 1012network.com. TE and the number 12, the word network. Like I said, I am the host of 1012 Podcast. It's the show that started it all. We post twice a week, Mondays and Thursdays. We're getting into football season, so it's an easy schedule. Mondays, we recap the weekend that was and look to the week ahead. On Thursdays, we make picks. I've got 2 co-hosts on Mondays and 2 co-hosts on Thursdays. And that's how it goes till basketball season. And then we throw everything into the wind and figure out what we're going to do like we always do.
Phillip Slavin, we will consider you part of the UC family. And thank you for being with us on the Sons of UCF.